Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Bold Take Scouting Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the 2023 NFL Draft for the very first time. Really specific episode where we're going to be breaking down Ohio State quarterback C.J. Stroud and Alabama quarterback Bryce Young, who are currently seen as the top two quarterbacks in next year's class. We're going to be talking about, if we think they are the real deal, are they future top 10 picks, franchise quarterbacks? Which one do we got ahead? Alex, do you have a preference already this early in the process between these two quarterbacks?
Most definitely. I think Stroud is a better quarterback prospect than Bryce Young by a decent margin.
Yeah, I think that's fair. What I find really impressive about Stroud's games is that he plays like he's way more experienced than he is. There are a lot of aspects of his game that are strengths that are typically issues for quarterbacks that enter the league with multiple years of starting experience in college. For example, he's got a really good internal clock where he goes through progressions, reads the field really well, and gets the ball out accurately to the receiver before the pass rush can really get to him. And he's good at sensing the pressure too and climbing the pocket to evade pressure. So I love that part of his game. He's already almost like a seasoned veteran in terms of distributing the ball. I think there's sometimes his mechanics are a little off, and that leads to an occasional missed throw. So his accuracy is good. You want it to be even better because he doesn't really run much, so he's going to be mainly a pocket passer. But I really like the natural traits in terms of arm strength, size, and he has some decent athleticism. And then when you combine that with the level of refinement he had in his first year as a starter at Ohio State, he's an impressive quarterback prospect who I think is going to be going really high and is going to be a franchise quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, I expect him to go top 10. I think he's a top 10 talent, and I expect him to obviously get better in 2022. And, I would expect him to be the first quarterback off the board. Obviously, a lot of things can change. You saw last year we both really liked Spencer Rattler, and you guys know how that went. But I think Rattler probably had some things that we may have overlooked a little bit that did cause him to kind of regress as a quarterback. And I from what I've seen and from what I've read, I don't think that C.J. Stroud has those issues. I want to go back to his refinement a little bit.
Yeah.
I was extremely impressed, first of all, by how much improvement he showed throughout the season.
Yeah.
He definitely looked a little bit rusty in those first few games, which is expected. He's playing at a top college football team as a first-year starter, expected to make the college football playoffs, and he did falter at times in the beginning of the season, specifically the Oregon game. He threw that interception late, which was just a really ill-advised throw.
Yeah.
But as the season progressed, I noticed that he progressed through his reads really, really well. A lot of the times he would just be able to throw the ball to his first read because they probably had the best wide receiver corps in the nation. But when he had to, he made it to his second read. He made it to his third read. He didn't take too long to get there, and he would make the throws. And he shows great timing, great anticipation when making those throws. And like you said, there were a lot of things that I saw on tape that I knew he was a first year starter watching the tape. But if you told me that he wasn't, I would completely believe you.
Yeah, I think it's really important to underline how big of a piece of succeeding early in your NFL career as a quarterback, having a fast internal clock is. It's something that, maybe a few years ago when we were younger and not fully into the scouting process like we are now, it wasn't the first thing that came to mind in terms of projecting quarterbacks to the NFL, but we're really seeing the last couple of years, quarterbacks that are having good seasons as, first, second year guys in the NFL, they can get the ball out really quickly, accurately to an open man before the pass rush can get to them. We saw Mac Jones be able to do that consistently. He doesn't really have the athleticism to evade the pass rush, but his brain is what allowed him to evade the pass rush. Joe Burrow is kind of similar in that sense, while some really talented guys that we really liked, like Justin Fields, for example, the internal clock was an issue coming out, and we kind of still saw that in his rookie season. So it's trait that I've come to really value, and it's something that C.J. Stroud totally has, and already in his first year of starting at Ohio State.
We can take that internal clock discussion back to Sam Howell. 2 years ago, we really liked him, but you brought this up multiple times. One of your biggest issues with him was he would hold on to the ball way too long, take unnecessary sacks, and we didn't see that improve. And We saw the team around him, kind of dissolve a little bit. They lost all this talent to the NFL, and he was stuck with, lesser talent, and he still held on to the ball for too long. And, we saw more of the same with Sam Howell. So that kind of really speaks to how important that internal clock is. And obviously you brought up Mac Jones, who I think is one of the best examples of that, as a rookie quarterback, because he doesn't have the athleticism, like you said, but he knows he's going to get sacked. And sure, would you like him to not take those sacks? You wish he had that athleticism? Yeah, but he knows that he can get rid of the ball, even if he has to throw it away. He knows he's going to get sacked. He knows he has to get rid of the ball. And that's why it's so important with Stroud. And although I don't see Stroud as a true rushing threat with the football, he has athleticism. He can run. He can make it, 10, 15 yards. He can drop a shoulder, which I don't necessarily like to see a quarterback do, but he has some moves and he can avoid pressure really well.
Yeah, I actually would like to see more of him trying to run just to be able to evaluate that piece of his game a little more. And, we might, because going back to Sam Howell, he rarely ran his first couple of years starting at UNC, but because they lost all that NFL talent, they just had to ask him to do that more often. And that is something that he did improve in is his ability to run, gain chunks of yardage with his legs. With only Jackson Smith and Jigba returning as an established star receiver and having lost Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, I think it's possible that the supporting cast isn't quite what it usually is at Ohio State. We still have to see if guys like Julian Fleming can step up, but maybe Stroud does get more opportunities to run, and we can really gauge his abilities there more to a better extent.
Don't forget about that Rose Bowl game.
True.
They didn't have either of those guys, and
but that was mostly just Jackson Smith and Jigba.
It was. That was, extremely impressive. Were you able to watch Rose Bowl tape at all?
No, that wasn't. I watched 5 game tapes, but not that one.
I found it was someone was breaking down film, and I just kind of turned it on mute and watched the plays, and just really, really impressive.
Yeah,
it might have been I would say it's the best game that I watched of him. He showed, great anticipation like we saw throughout, but I think he really peaked at the right time, and he's gonna, be riding high heading into next season, and I think he should be a Heisman candidate.
Yeah, definitely. So talking about the other quarterback here, Bryce Young, what do you like from him? And then what do you not like that puts him solidly behind CJ Stroud? Because I do agree too. I've got Stroud as my QB1, and I see that I'm pretty confident about that over Bryce Young.
Yeah, I don't really want people to think that I hate Bryce Young. I still
definitely
think he's a first-round prospect. He has a lot of really important traits that you want. I think his accuracy is really good on the short and intermediate routes. Deep ball accuracy, I think, kind of wavers at times. But you can see he processes information very fast. He's got a great brain. And we talked about this a couple days ago. He's a prototypical Alabama quarterback. He kind of reminds me of Tua a little bit with that short intermediate passing game. He's going to protect the football, not really going to make bad decisions. He gets the football out, when he needs to, where he needs to. But he kind of lacks that deep ball. He can't really run at all, and not because he's not athletic, but just because of his size.
Yeah.
He's listed at 6 foot 194, I think.
Yeah.
To me, that means he's 5'11", maybe even 5'10", and probably 185. So he definitely needs to bulk up just to really survive. And this size really is a big concerning factor for me.
Yeah, I can already warn everyone that as much as we talked about Kenny Pickett's hand size throughout this entire draft process, Bryce Young's height and weight will be even more heavily scrutinized and talked about in the media, because I think he's going to opt to get out of any way in that he can, because he really won't be hitting anywhere near the standards that NFL teams want. And, it is a concern. For me, being a shorter quarterback isn't too much of a concern, because obviously Drew Brees had a fantastic career, and it really doesn't, and Russell Wilson too. So I think being short's not that big of an issue, but take Brees and Wilson, they do have good builds on them. And Bryce Young is really skinny. So that's why I agree with you. He has some abilities and some athleticism, but you don't want him running the ball. And then he is really good at distributing to short and intermediate range. But with the deep ball a little inconsistent right now, and him holding the ball too long a little right now, he gets kind of cute trying to get out of pressure instead of just getting the ball out earlier. I think that it shows that he really needs to improve those two aspects of his game, because if he's not going to be a runner, he has a lot less of a margin for error as a passer. If he just can't really improve his deep ball and his internal clock, he profiles a little bit as a game manager who you can really rely on to distribute the ball short and intermediate, but he's not going to break the game open with his arm or his legs in terms of throwing deep or getting out chunk yardage with his legs. So I think that he's really got to improve those two things. If he does, then I'm comfortable taking him high in the first round. I just need to see that from him first.
Yeah, I just want to go back to that size discussion for a minute. Russell Wilson is listed at 5'11", which, I expect Bryce Young right around that same range. But Russell Wilson is listed at 215 pounds.
Yeah.
And he's a muscular dude. He's thick. And, not to knock Bryce Young, but he's not super muscular. He could be.
I wonder if he does try to pack on weight this offseason.
I would hope so. And I'm sure that, Alabama has a ton of guys that have gone to the NFL. They have a ton of connections. I'm sure NFL guys are in Nick Saban's ear telling Nick Saban to tell Bryce Young, hey, we just need you to put on some more muscle. Even if he can bulk up to 205 and put on, 10 pounds of muscle, I think that would go a long way because, 10 pounds of muscle will make him look thicker. He'll be more filled out and will definitely give him some protection. But I know this kind of came up a little bit when we were talking about Zach Wilson. He was still like 210, and he bulked up to, I think he's played the rookie season at 215.
Yeah.
And he's planning on playing this season at 218. So if Bryce Young could even get to 205, I would, be happy with that, knowing that he's not going to be a guy that weighs 225, 230 pounds.
Yeah.
And we have a comment that says Matt Corral better than Bryce Young, and let's take this back, comparing these guys where they are right now and where we expect them to be to this past year's quarterback class. And I'll let you start off. Let's talk about where we put C.J. Stroud first, and then we'll talk about where we put Bryce Young.
If C.J. Stroud was draft eligible this year, he would have been my QB1. He really would have been. Kenny Pickett was my QB1, but I was still hesitant on him. I didn't love how he gets jittery against pressure. I didn't love how he is a little bit of a fumble threat throughout his time at Pittsburgh, and he doesn't really have a game-breaking arm. C.J. Stroud is better against pressure. We didn't see any fumbles at all, I don't think. And he really can break the game open with his arm. I think C.J. Stroud would have been my QB1. Bryce Young would have been right in the late round one conversation, I think, after Corral and Willis. So if we rank all these guys together, it would have been Stroud, Pickett, Corral, Willis, Young in that order. And that's because I see the potential with Young, but he still needs to fix some things to get there. And the upside is even higher with Corral and Willis because I think they do have superior arm talents and better builds and better athleticism, so they can be real dual threats. While that's not really the case with Young.
Yeah, I agree with your rankings there. I would have C.J. Stroud as the quarterback one, comparing these two draft classes. And just a reminder for people, Corral, based purely on tape and film, he was our QB1 in the process, but because of multiple people mentioning some bigger off-the-field concerns, we dropped him below Pickett. And we've discussed that on our previous podcasts, so I'm not going to really bring those up again. But, yeah, I agree. Stroud, Pickett, Corral, Willis, and then Young. I think Young has a higher floor than both Corral and Willis, but I think they both have a much higher ceiling. Bryce Young kind of reminds me of Tua a little bit. I think Tua's a lot more injury prone. I mean, we've only seen 1 year from Bryce Young, but I think, based off the tape, it's really similar for Tua and Bryce Young.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now, I've got another question, and we alluded to it before. We really liked Spencer Rattler and Sam Howell last summer. We did a way too early mock draft where we projected them 1-2, and we felt pretty confident about it because, we really liked the tape. What are the chances that the same happens with Stroud and Young, and they don't really end up being what we expect them to be? They don't end up being top 10 picks, and a year later we're in the same position where we're looking back and we're like, I really wish we didn't attach our names to these guys and claim that they're going to be such high picks and good quarterbacks in the NFL.
So I mean, I can't really see that happening with CJ Stroud. I mean, again, if you asked me that last year, I'd say there's no way that happens to Rattler
Yeah.
or Howell. But I feel like CJ Stroud, from what we've seen on tape, is a really safe prospect. He displays all the things that you want to see from a guy who has a lot of experience, and he doesn't have a lot of experience, which is a huge plus for me. I think Howell and Rattler were still kind of all over the place. We saw the talent. We didn't see the they weren't as refined as CJ Stroud was. I think,
Yeah.
we love both their arms. They could sling the ball. They had really good accuracy. And I can't remember exactly how I felt about them progressing through all their reads.
Pretty
And
good.
with obviously Howell's internal clock was a bit of a concern, but I feel like CJ Stroud is a lot more refined in the areas that are extremely important and maybe harder to teach.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can't teach talent, but all three of these guys have a lot of talent. And I think you could make the argument Oklahoma's scheme helped Rattler a lot his first year. A lot of guys were schemed open. He didn't necessarily have to make it to his second or third read. And, I've seen Stroud do that plenty of times to know that he's comfortable doing that, and he can do that when he needs to.
Yeah, I agree with you that I think it's a lot less likely for the same to happen. They are safer bets to end up high in the draft order next year. And I think part of that is if you look back in hindsight, there are a couple things that we missed with Rattler and how they were really concerning. And with Rattler, it might actually just be the kind of wild card, immature, kind of a jerk personality that he had been portrayed as that we didn't really put much stock into because it's always hard to evaluate that side of a prospect given that we don't have any direct sources. Everything's just word of mouth through the media. But maybe we should have paid a little bit of attention to that narrative that could have ended up playing a factor in his poor play and getting benched for Caleb Williams. And Sam Howell, I really liked everything about him. I liked the arm strength. I liked the athleticism. I liked his accuracy, his ability to go through his reads. What I really didn't like is him holding the ball too long, failing to sense pressure, and taking way too many unnecessary sacks. And that was, in large part, his downfall in 2022, is that when he didn't have receivers and running backs who were consistently getting open because they left for the NFL, he couldn't elevate his supporting cast, and he kind of crumbled under pressure throughout the season. I don't see either of those issues with Stroud and Young. We've only heard good things about them in terms of personality, and they won't really have a drop-off in their supporting cast. Yes, Stroud is losing Wilson and Olave, but, with Smith and Jigba still there, that good of a running game. It's Ohio State. They're probably just going to reload at wide receiver and have some really good players again. Same with Alabama. I doubt that Stroud and Young are going to be in really worse situations in terms of supporting cast, and I would be shocked if character or anything like that played a role in them dropping off.
Yeah, I think it is important to note with Young, though, that you do see his name up at the top, the top 3, top 5 picks in mock drafts. And I wouldn't be shocked if he falls, or not necessarily falls, but if he ends up, the end of the first round, maybe 15 where Mac Jones went, or,
Yeah.
mid-20s, like, Kenny Pickett, just because he doesn't really have that sky-high upside to me. So I think if he plays a very similar season to as he did last season, and doesn't really show a improved deep ball or doesn't bulk up at all, I wouldn't be surprised to see him go towards the end of round 1, and I think that would probably be a shock to a lot of people. But I think that's just because they're not really digging into the tape as much.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people are maybe mistaken about what the NFL thinks of these players. Obviously, we really don't know what they think. We haven't heard anything from NFL sources indirectly even, but I would be really surprised if heading into the season, there were really firm top 10 grades being given out to Bryce Young. We're often seeing him atop mock drafts at number 1, but I would think that NFL evaluators are really concerned with the size. They see the lack of upside, and I think that it is a pretty fair projection, like you said, that he's going to end up in the mid first round because he's a good quarterback. He's really good at distributing the ball. Right now, if I were to have to project a year out, no matter how hard it is, I would say Stroud goes top 5, contends even for first overall, and Young ends up in that, maybe 12 to 20 range to a team that is okay with him being maybe a little bit of a game manager because, Mac Jones, that was the tag he had, but he's a solid quarterback, probably will be for a long time, and Pickett could do the same thing. I just think that maybe people in the Instagram scouting community and in the public know that Bryce Young was this star and the Heisman winner and are pushing him at the top of their way too early mock drafts where, as you said, he could be going a little later. And maybe it's CJ Stroud, the one that ends up going first. And I would like to note that we haven't yet scouted the other quarterbacks like Tyler Van Dyke, Will Levis. We haven't gotten to these guys yet. This is just comparing Stroud and Young because it seems like consensus they're the top two guys.
Yeah, and we have a question about Carson Strong. And if any of you guys remember, we really liked Carson Strong. It would have been a year and a half ago now. Before the start of last season, we loved his arm strength. I thought that he, even though he lacked mobility, I thought because of his arm, and I thought that he showed an ability to progress through his reads and read the defense. So I thought because of those things, he'd be able to survive without his lack of mobility. But obviously the knee was a concern because he went undrafted. I think his talent did not warrant him going undrafted at all. And I know you mentioned no knee brace anymore. The knee issue really concerns me. I don't know if we've really explained what happened with his knee. I'll just explain really quickly. Basically, he hurt his knee in high school. And what happened to it was he either chipped the knee or knocked off the blood supply to one of the either bones in his knee or his kneecap, causing the part of the bone that lacked blood supply to start to die and disintegrate, which probably caused a lot of issues, potentially tearing up a lot of cartilage, which would explain why he really lacked mobility because he couldn't really move. And he waited to get surgery, from what I understand, until this offseason. Potentially 4 years of that on his knee I really think is really bad, because all that cartilage could be shredded. It's really hard for cartilage to grow back. I think if his knee is great and he miraculously, healed close to 100%, I think he really could be in a good situation. Jalen Hurts doesn't pan out this year, and maybe the Eagles put him in a game or two and maybe like what they see. Who knows? I think perfectly healthy. I think he has starter potential, but I just unfortunately don't foresee that because of the knee issue.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, the knee's concerning. Otherwise, I gave him a third round grade despite it because I think he does have the potential to be a starter. That arm strength is the best in the class. It really was the best in the class, and he throws the deep ball really well too. He doesn't just spray it downfield. There is accuracy on deep ball, some beautiful shots right into the bucket. I think he needed to improve on his ability to go through progressions and to sense pressure, especially because, as you said, with limited mobility, you've got to be right on with those things to be able to be a pure pocket passer, and he wasn't there yet, which is why he had a third round grade and not higher. I disagree with you about the situation. I think it as an undrafted quarterback, you're facing such a hard path to reps in practice to get better and to any playing time on the field during the regular season. The backup to Jalen Hurts is Gardner Minshew, and if Hurts falters in any way, I can't see Strong getting in the game ahead of Minshew. Minshew is a seasoned veteran at this point who is a very good backup and can definitely get you a couple wins if he's forced to get on the field. So I think Strong's really got to fight Reed Sinnett for the QB3 spot there, and not even that's not guaranteed because if he is showing a lack of mobility in training camp, doesn't get many reps to show anything other than that. And Sinnett's been in the league as a QB3 for a couple of years, he might not make the roster. So as much as I liked Carson Strong for a couple of years now, I recognize that it's going to be hard for him to succeed in the NFL, and in large part because draft capital determines a lot in terms of opportunity for quarterbacks.
Yeah, I totally forgot that Minshew was the backup quarterback there, and you're right. If Hurts does falter, Minshew's going to be the guy, and I was kind of shocked that he went to the Eagles. I thought that there were potential spots where, maybe he could have a starting shot at least. And I guess he does have a starting shot now. And I argued that the Colts should have gone to get him when we knew the Jaguars were taking Trevor Lawrence number 1 overall. I thought that, he brings this leadership that is really special. The team really seemed to rally around him in Jacksonville. So you're right. I think that Minshew is kind of the solidified backup for the Eagles and potentially starter if Hurts does falter.
Yeah. All right. Let's get back to Stroud and Young before we finish off. So a year out, super hard to predict, even knowing who's going to be in the quarterback market next year. But let's just throw a couple darts into the dark here. What do you think would be a realistic landing spot for each of these guys next year?
The Lions, I think that's kind of an
Yeah.
obvious situation. I think I wouldn't have been shocked if they took a quarterback this year and they
Hmm.
didn't. They decided to stick with Goff, build the team up, and I think the Lions would honestly be a good landing spot for a quarterback next year. I think they have good talent surrounding them: offensive line, wide receiver, running back, tight end.
Yeah, and then if I'll say so. I think the Lions for Strong is definitely a good spot. How about for Bryce Young, the Giants? Because Brian Dable was the offensive coordinator at Alabama. He didn't get to coach Bryce Young and Young's sole season as a starter so far, but he's got all the connections to Alabama. He can get all the information he wants on Young. He can find out from the Alabama coaching staff, can he put on weight, or do they know that he's maxed out at his current frame? That's a big thing that maybe only Dable and other guys with real connections to people in that building are going to be able to get the answer to. So let's say he gets affirmative, positive answers on things that are really out of what you can see on film. I could see a year from now, if Daniel Jones was kind of holding the team back, them going for Bryce Young. So how about that? A year from now, maybe CJ Stroud's going in the top 5 or 6 picks to the Detroit Lions, and a few picks later, Bryce Young to the New York Giants.
One other team, the Saints. They
Yeah.
didn't. Oh, they don't have a first round pick. Never
No,
mind.
no, no, they
They don't
don't.
have a first round pick.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
scrap that. Scrap
Yeah.
that. Um, yeah. So I think we see Stroud as a better quarterback prospect than Young. I expect to see Stroud top 10, and I think you'd agree with that. I think Young could be anywhere between, borderline top 10 to towards the end of the first round, depending on improving that deep ball accuracy, improving his frame, getting his weight up, and, just a few other things. It'll be really fun to watch these guys throughout the season and see if there's any risers. There
Oh yeah.
always is. Kenny Pickett this year.
Yeah.
Obviously, he didn't rise to top 5, but still a big riser. So it'll be interesting to see who that will be in the 2022 season.
Yeah, I'm sure this is not the last time we're going to talk about quarterbacks before the start of the season. We'll watch the guys like Tyler Van Dyke and Will Levis and share our thoughts, because those are the really intriguing ones, because they could end up going first round, or they could be not even declaring for the draft, going day 3. There's probably a wide range of options there. So it's going to be fun to track this quarterback class. There's a big narrative built around it that it's going to be strong, and it kind of falls on the shoulders of Stroud and Young primarily to make that happen. Overall, yeah, we do like what we see from tape. If Stroud produces the same season as he did last year, I'll love him and I'll take him in the top 5. If Young improves his deep ball accuracy, holds the ball a little less long, I'll take him pretty early too. So they definitely do make the class promising, and it was fun to already dive into that tape.
Yep. Thanks everyone for watching, for listening. We'll be back with another episode soon.